Thanks for tuning into TellyCast. Each week, we speak with TV's movers and shakers to get the latest insight and opinion on industry developments. There's a new episode every Thursday. Our website, TellyCast.com, includes additional exclusive feature content from TV's thought leaders. Articles are free to read. Just register on TellyCast.com. And while you're there, why not sign up for our free newsletter, TellyCast Plus? Thanks again for listening. I hope you enjoy the show.
TellyCast, the TV industry news review.
My guest on this week's show is Vera Krichevskaya, co-founder of Dozhd, or TV Rain, the Russian independent TV news channel. Vera is also director of the feature documentary Fuck This Job, Tango with Putin, that launched recently in cinemas and on BBC iPlayer under the Storyville brand. Vera, welcome to TellyCast. I can imagine last month or so has been one of enormous upheaval for you.
You know, I've been gone through so many different turbulence, but this one is absolutely unique. I cannot compare this last 3 weeks with anything in my life.
I can only imagine. I know you've been incredibly busy over the past couple of weeks. And obviously, for those who aren't aware of the story, that will become clear as we get to have a discussion. First of all, congratulations on the film, on the documentary film. It's a fascinating watch. But I can imagine the satisfaction and joy of having your project released has been tempered somewhat by recent developments in Russia and the Ukraine.
Is it coincidence? We scheduled this film release last December 2021. Frankly, I would prefer to have different landscape. I would prefer less media around. I would prefer everything. I hate this war. I hate this landscape. And yes, I know that film gets lots of attention because of the story and topic is very relevant, more than relevant to the time. But I would prefer previous landscape, yeah.
You prefer to be maybe back to normal or whatever normal was, maybe, which is...
Yeah.
For those who haven't seen it yet, the film follows the story of Dozhd, or TV Rain. For those who aren't familiar with the channel, can you give us an idea of how it started? Because you're co-founder of the channel, aren't you?
Yes, I am. First of all, which is important for international audience, that Dozht TV or TV Rain is the only independent news TV station in Russia during last 12 years. The only, literally. There were several independent medias in Russia that work from inside Russia as Dozhd, but not TV. It was radio, online newspaper, etc. It was the only independent screen in Russia. The company was launched in 2008. It was the last year of the second term of President Putin. He gave his throne, he gave his reign to his technical president, Dmitry Medvedev. But for us, it was a sign of hope. Because back then, we didn't know what kind of plans Mr. Putin has in his mind. And we thought maybe he won't come back to Kremlin. I didn't think so. But my partner, Natasha, who is the main character of the film, she really believed that it's going to be new time, new era, and Vladimir Putin won't come back to the Kremlin.
And Natasha was involved in a radio station, wasn't she, before setting up TV Rain with you?
Natasha was one of the top managers of the extremely popular music radio station. She came from show business. She was very familiar with all the celebrities, musicians. She was always around her. It was permanent party around her all the time. She knew nothing about politics. She could say names of president and premier minister of Russia back then. Nothing more.
Right. Okay.
She was a completely apolitical person, and she had never ever voted. She didn't participate any election by 2000. I think her first election was 2012. So we have her as the main protagonist of the film, socialite, flamboyant, dancer, top manager of music radio station, wealthy. She just got married to successful banker, Dolce Vita, beautiful life, money, everything, whatever you want. And she came up with the idea, I want to have TV empire. So it's how we met. By then I was working for 15 years on independent television. I was multi-awarded TV producer and director. So we met and decided to launch new TV station. It was 2008. It is the beginning. It is the settings of the film. And we follow her journey, my journey, and country's journey during next 12 years. And she was wealthy. She became poor. She was enormously positive. She became much less positive. She's still an optimist, but she's very profound, very devoted person, citizen, very responsible. She is a real fighter, and the Kremlin didn't estimate her properly because they had no idea that they had to pay attention on a dancer, on someone from show business. They didn't pay enough attention.
They underestimated her and you. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So the company was shut down 3 times. The last time it was Friday, March 4th, 10 days ago. Company last broadcast. 2 previous shutdowns were different because never ever in 12 years of Dozhd's history, Dozhd postponed news broadcasting even for a day. And right now it is a completely new page of this group of people history, 10 days without broadcasting. And it is a completely new reality. It's a red line, borderline between our previous life, our previous obstacles, turbulence, everything, and this reality.
Yeah. You know, what struck me was when you launched the channel, it was about optimistic TV, wasn't it? That was the hope. This was TV for normal people. Obviously, this was a commercial channel, commercial opportunity, and it was purely something that you felt would work within the commercial framework of the broadcasting industry in Russia at that point. We saw through the film, and I don't want to give too much away of the film because, you know, I really encourage everybody to go and watch it at the cinema or BBC iPlayer. But you had President Dmitry Medvedev on the channel as well, fairly soon after you launched, I think, relatively soon.
It was the first anniversary. We achieved so much during our first year on air that President back then, Medvedev, came to our studio to greet us, to say hello, to meet us, to talk to our audience. Yes, it was completely a regular thing that President steps in small, tiny, independent media, completely unprecedented.
At that point, presumably you felt that, okay, we're now in the focus of the Kremlin, or that, you know, the establishment in Russia is taking notice of us, obviously. Do you get the idea that they wanted to transmit their messages to your audience, to a different audience than perhaps they could communicate with through state TV?
important that the first shutdown of the company happened before Medvedev's visit.
Oh, really?
Yes. It is out of the film because otherwise film would be 3 hours long. So the first shutdown happened on our 10th day on air. And it happened because we got a license as a media. Natasha was very transparent. I got a license so I can make a media. But in Russia, it doesn't work like that. If you want to make a media, if you want to make a news especially, you have to get your supervisor or you have to negotiate it somehow with the presidential administration. Otherwise, it won't work. That's not enough to get a license. Natasha knew that. I told her about it, and many people around asked her, did you get a permission? Did you get a permission? She responded, yes, I got a license. And people thought she's crazy. And but she wasn't. On our 10th day on air, we got a lesson. We got a lesson that you have to somehow negotiate with us your existence. So we were cut off from cable providers. We got agreement. We started selling advertisement, but we had to forget about it and start from the beginning, from on internet. So Medvedev came to our office when we relaunch our broadcasting again, not through cable channels, but by through satellite and internet. And we achieved a lot. And especially in Moscow, people were talking about us because we did a completely different job. If you watch television, state television, and us, you got a feeling that it's two different countries. Are they broadcasting from the same country? So it was completely different picture. It is, from the beginning, it was oral reality, completely staged, created propaganda. Not that level as we have now. Easier, simpler, and etc. But already it was clear that there are companies, they follow some specific kind of, not order, but they have the same list of stories, the same angles of stories, and another company with completely different world, completely different picture. So, of course, yeah, your question about Medvedev, of course, he thought to find his audience among 25 plus, very proactive people, very well educated, because we had always premium audience.
The one thing that struck me was, it looked incredibly exciting as a young business growing incredibly rapidly. And, many of us have worked within businesses that have been very successful from a startup or have gone through a very steep growth period. And it's an amazing ride. But I think, looking at what you achieved and how you achieved it, that's kind of at another level. The channel was really meant to be a lifestyle channel, wasn't it? That started covering politics and protests. Am I right in saying that? Because some of the issues that you covered, particularly gay rights, which was, something that had never, I imagine, been featured on TV, was perhaps one of the areas that you broke through a bit of a ceiling at that point. And maybe that was an idea of what was to come in terms of your editorial approach.
When we launched the company, we thought that we're going to produce news and lifestyle stories, but based on our perception of normal, healthy life, which means, I'll give you an example. When we started broadcasting, we produced many very short, like 3 minutes documentaries about our values, about people we respect, people we love, people we share our values with. The cause of these short 3 minutes documentaries was to attract our people, our audience who shared the same values. And one of the first, and maybe literally first, this short doc was about Harvey Milk. But it was before the anti-gay law was imposed in Russia. It was 3 years before that. And of course, for us, it was absolutely normal because it is our friends, it is us. And for us, it was a sign of normality. I mean, our lifestyle content was very specific as well, because it was like normal lifestyle, but not for Russia, not for such conservative society. Usual American TV station.
You know, looking at how the company developed, and you said you were taken off air 3 times, and we'll get to the last time in a little while. But after Medvedev came on as a guest, did things change, do you think, from an editorial perspective? Because I think the idea that I got was Natasha is very much the figurehead, and as you say, wasn't necessarily interested in politics, whereas you were really focusing, I'm imagining, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that you were sort of driving the editorial approach of the channel. How did having Medvedev coming on as a guest, what did you think about that? And was that your decision?
I didn't want to welcoming him on our studio. I didn't want to. I missed his visit in purpose. My fear was that Natasha might become closer to the power, to the Kremlin. But in my mind, and it is, it will, that we have to have a concrete wall in terms of personal relationship, in terms of any relationship, nothing except business with people in power. And I thought that his visit might poisoning us and Natasha. And I think I tell this story in details in the film. We had arguing and I left the company for a while. Fortunately for the company, Medvedev came to our office in April. It was maybe last days of April 2011. And in 4 months' time, on September same year, he returned his reign to Mr. Putin.
Yes.
Which was out of the blue for everyone, because everyone hoped that he will run for the second term. He refused and he changed constitution. He made term longer from 4 years to 6 years and returned it safely to his older friend, Mr. Putin. So that's why our Dozhd didn't have time to manage any relationship with the Kremlin and presidential administration. So his visit was completely useless, as we know now, and in all means.
So can you give us an idea of the Dozhd audience then at that point, in terms of how the channel built over the years? I mean, it's a sort of more of a younger audience.
It wasn't young audience because we were back then 35, 37. Mostly we made a company for our friends, for our generation, for people like us. So I would say that it was maybe 25 plus to 45 plus. It was a core audience back then. Later, the audience of Dozht TV became very diverse because by 2014, when Dozht was shut down for the second time, Dozht was in 30 million households in Russia. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a households. There's not a one person, it's a families.
To give us some context, what about some of the other state-run channels? Was it competing on, was it fairly similar sort of viewing figures or?
No. Because first of all, we were on cable packages. Most of them wasn't for free. but it was like tiny amount of money. I don't remember, almost for free. But Russia, the big Russia, used to watch television for free. In every apartment, there was a TV set. You could switch it on and got 4 state channels for free. It is the core of propaganda even now.
Yes.
You could not watch Dozhd by this way. You have to get cable providers or something else, satellites. So you needed something, some tools, some equipment to watch it. But still, it was 30 million households.
People were a slightly more media savvy audience if they've gone to the trouble of getting that equipment, as you say, with the satellite dish or whatever. So watching the film, it really seemed to take a turn around the time of the Russian invasion of the Crimea, because you started reporting on that, and it's some incredible footage, and I won't give it away, but that's one of the reasons why the film is called what it's called. Some of the footage that we saw and some of the comments we heard. Was it the reporting of what was happening in Crimea? Did that change things for you?
It was reporting what was happening in Maidan, in Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, main square, city center. There was a second Ukrainian revolution during last 15 years. The first one was in 2005. It was Orange Revolution. This one, it was November 2014. It's kind of another revolution in Ukraine. And there were enormous, huge protesting movement. People were standing on that square weeks. And we were covering the beginning of this revolution. We were covering them 3 months without stops. All our presenters learned Ukrainian. They could translate simultaneously Ukrainian into Russians. But landscape in Ukraine, media landscape in Ukraine was very different back then. And for most of Ukrainians, Dozhd was the only independent source as well.
Okay, so it was popular in Ukraine as well, Dozhd?
Yeah, it was extremely popular. Dozhd was switched on in every cafe, every shop, everywhere during Maidan. We call it Maidan Revolution. And of course, Russia and Putin, they were on another side. They were on the side of current president of Ukraine, Yanukovych, but we were covering protest movement against him. It became threat for Moscow as well, because we were showing that people can achieve, because it's a very close people to us, not the same as us. They're different, but we are based on same cultural DNA and many things very common for us. And we showed people who want to be with Europe, who want to be integrated in Western society, and they are stubborn. You cannot move them from the square. Step by step, it was becoming a threat, and Kremlin openly had narrative. They might bring Maidan to Moscow. So it is how this war started. That's why this film is so relevant, because we show step by step how we were approaching February 24th this year, step by step. It's coincident.
It's incredible. And presumably you had to literally edit the end cards at the end of the documentary, because so for everybody who may have seen in the news the remarkable coverage of your last broadcast, which was, as you said, a couple of weeks ago now, that made the news all over the world when you signed off with Swan Lake. Can you tell us a little bit about that last day and why you chose to sign off in that way? And what was the pressure that made you have to shut down the channel?
From February 24th, first day of the war, Dozht has been broadcasting 24/7 without breaks. Dozht was covering as much as possible the war, the beginning of the war, first days of the war. Dozht gave voices to Ukrainians, to Ukrainian politicians. Dozht gave voices for Russians, Russian politicians, Russian representatives of the Russian Minister of Defense. So we were quite balanced as usual. We gave two sides and we gave quite wide picture of what is going on. At the first day of the war, first law was imposed that restricted to say word war and to rely on any or quote any sources of what is going on the war field except the Russian Minister of Defense and Russian state news agencies. Until Tuesday, it was March the 1st, 6 days, Dozht presenters and reporters played with words and information somehow. They, for example, said, we cannot say war, we have to say special operation, but for our audience, it was clear, we were on the same way. And, or they said like, and what we must call special operation,
Okay, yeah.
So it was.
So you were emphasizing the allowed description, and the more you emphasized that, the clearer it was for your audience. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. And if Dozht gave figures and any precise information about deaths or so from Ukrainian side, they immediately made the remark that Russian Minister of Defense said it didn't happen. So first 6 days, it worked. On Tuesday, March the 1st, day before our film release in Russia, Dozht and another radio were shut down by the government. Dozht website providers blocked. Dozht website, Dozht player. But Dozht was continuing broadcasting on YouTube. On Thursday, March 4th, new law was presented in Russian parliament, not signed in, but presented. It was imposed in 2 days on Saturday. This law makes any information about the war came not from the Russian state agencies or Russian Ministry of Defense punishable with 15 years in prison for reporters, for presenters, for CEO of the company, and etc. We had a choice to continue our broadcast on YouTube, telling whatever except the war, or we had a choice to convey official information, Russian official information to our audience, or to silence themselves, to suicide. And Natasha, the CEO of the company and my film protagonist, decided to shut down the company. So that's what happened, and all the world saw our last broadcast and Swan Lake afterwards. Yeah.
Tell us why you chose Swan Lake. Why was that meaningful?
Oh, it's a long story. It's a very cultural Russian stuff. Each time when General Secretary of Communist Party passed away during my childhood, all 3 state channels showed Swan Lake. And when the coup of 1991 happened, why Russians found out about the coup, they switched on TV and found Swan Lake there. It always was a sign of disaster. Disaster happened. So we finish our news broadcast, our statements with the Swan Lake in loop
That's a very strong cultural message you're sending there. So
Yeah, it was, and it's extremely sad. It's a tragedy, but it was so great. It was so great.
that's the way to go out.
Yeah.
So we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. Last night on Channel 1, so an editor, she ran onto the set of one of the main news shows, transmission, shouting, "Stop the war, no to war." What did you make of that?
It is the first screen of the country. It's not just the first screen of the country, the Channel 1. It is the main news program. So it's extremely big. It's huge. It's a courage. In 1968, when Soviet tanks invaded Prague, Czechoslovakia, 7 people went to the Red Square with a poster for "Your freedoms and ours" in a sign on the poster. And their protest lasted a couple of minutes. All of them were arrested. And 30, 40 years passed. We made documentaries about them. They became heroes. It was heroic act during Soviet time. What we saw last night, it was replica. It was completely the same action to intervene in this news broadcast and the main TV channel with this anti-war poster. So most likely she is in custody now, and we don't know what is happening with her. She doesn't have lawyers, because different lawyers and human rights activists tried to find her since it happened, and they didn't find her. And I think she will be punished enormously to show her colleagues, because so many people work on state TV. It's a huge team, and many of them think the same, but because of different reasons, they have to proceed what they do. So I think, unfortunately, he will be punished.
Incredible bravery.
Yeah. To show others, keep silent.
One last question for you, Vera. Do you think Russian audiences will ever see Dozhd back on air whilst Putin is in power? Is there any way that you can produce from outside of Russia? Would that ever be an option for you?
We are thinking about it.
Okay. Well, I wish you all the very best with what you do, certainly with the film as well. Did you always plan to make a film? Because there's so much amazing footage right from the beginning of Dozhd, from the outset. Did you always plan to create a documentary? But just the very fact that you have a TV channel means that you've got loads of footage.
No. It's an incredible group of people. They're incredible. And one of the qualities there, all of them are narcissists. So they love to film each other from the beginning. Yes. And it was before selfie era. It was before Instagram era. Yeah. But all of them, and especially Natasha, they thought they have to film themselves, because we are making television. We have to film ourselves. Just that's how this archive was built.
It's really a stunning watch. So everybody, I'll put a link in the episode description of the podcast to the film's website and to iPlayer. If in the UK, you can access it there. Vera, thank you so much. You've been super generous with your time. I could speak to you for another hour because I've got so many other questions, and I realise I've run out of time. Hopefully you're in London. Maybe I'll see you at some time and we can carry it on. But thank you again. Wishing you the very best and what happens, certainly with the film, but also with Dozhd.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, that's about it for this week's show. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to TellyCast and share it with friends and colleagues. We've got a brand new website that includes exclusive feature content from TV's opinion leaders and journalists. They're all free to access. Just sign up at telecast.com. And while you're there, why not sign up for our free newsletter as well, Telecast Plus. You can also follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Telecast was edited by Ian Chambers and recorded in London. We'll be in Lille for Series Mania next week, so if you're going, we'll see you there. If not, until next week's show, as always, stay safe.